Welcome to the Bias Buzz. I'm Don Irvine. He's Brian McNichol.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right. Just a couple of trending topics. So we've got a big hurricane bearing down in Florida, and I guess it'll make its way up the East Coast. So if you're out there, please stay safe and follow the advice of the officials. Do not try to go and do anything crazy out there.
Yeah, and my LSU Tigers are supposed to play in Gainesville on Saturday. They made the decision yesterday that the game will happen on time, Saturday at noon. We have to fly into Ocala on Friday and get over to Gainesville. So they're going to have the game. I guess Miami and Florida State are playing in Miami. They think it will be past there by then. But there was somebody going to play Central Florida, and they called that one off. So somebody has their head on straight.
Yeah, so that's always kind of a tough call, but you have to be safe and just do whatever you think needs to be done here. The other thing is that so we're now into October baseball. I love it.
I do too.
And so this week we had the Mets and the Giants. That was a great game last night. A good pitcher's duel, I think, just like advertised until the closer failed.
Yeah, and Connor Gillespie, a guy who's spent 8 years in the minor leagues, played against all our local teams. I've seen him play for years and years. Hits a home run of his life, And then they were talking. I was listening to radio this morning driving up here, like how hard he had to work to get around the bases without celebrating too much and making the other team mad and so forth. But I mean, that's the moment of a guy like that. You toil in the minors 8-9 years. That's your moment.
Right, and that
means
and there may he may not do a darn thing going forward, but that'll be his moment. That is going to be his memory to share with kids and grandkids and everything like that. You don't get too many of those in the big leagues, especially in October. So that was a great game, and then we also had the other playoff game between Baltimore and Toronto. Lots of controversy about the decision with Buck Showalter. Why didn't he use Zach Britton? Arguably the best relief pitcher in baseball this year.
That's right. I'm with Buck on this. He had a starting pitcher out there, Ubaldo Jimenez, who had been real good down the stretch. If he gets out of that inning, he could, in theory, you're fine till the 15th or 16th inning with him out there. 5 innings would not have been a big problem for him. He stretched out the start, and if you take the lead, then you bring in Britton to close down the game. You put in Britton there in the 11th inning, then if you get ahead later, how do you finish the game? You don't really have anybody for that. But now he has all winter to think about it.
Right. And for all those prognosticators that have been sitting on their couch, put yourself in Buck's situation. I'm not going to go one way or the other necessarily on this, but you try to manage a Major League Ball club in October in a wild card playoff game. There are so many things going on there. Buck is a great manager overall, and I think we'll just get a new hashtag rolling here with Brian with I am Buck. Maybe I should have made a sign had I known that he was going to say that beforehand. All right, so now let's move on. 33 days until the election. Things are really getting down to the nitty-gritty. We had the vice presidential debate, candidate debate the other night, and it was the least watched VP debate since 2000. I wasn't expecting a lot of fireworks. What did you think about this whole thing?
Well, what you're trying to find out there is these are the people that are going to be a heartbeat from the presidency, and it's especially, these are the 2 oldest candidates ever for president. And so there's some significance to who is this guy. And I don't think that you could watch that debate and be comfortable with Tim Kaine being that guy. He was rabid. I mean, I don't think Pence, I think it could have been even better for Pence and even worse for Tim Kaine if Pence had noticed how angry he was getting. I mean, you could just see him they had the split screen. You could just see him becoming furious at this stuff. And, they gave him this briefing book, and he was on the briefing book. He memorized every word in it, and he spat it all out as quickly as he could. But his whole demeanor, his whole, I've got to get this said now, no matter what it's 72 interruptions or something. He didn't do his ticket any good. And I don't know if you're looking at it objectively how you could be trustful of that guy in the White House.
Right, and I think the media struggled with this because I think after the Clinton Trump debate, they felt, well, momentum was clearly in Clinton's camp, in her corner, and that Kaine should do an able job and everything like that. And I think about, too, when I look at a senator, or when I think about a senator, we're always told that the Senate has this decorum, where the House is kind of those 435 people kind of always fighting and stewing, but the Senate is, there are far fewer people in there, and they have this. If there's anything about this, is that Pence looked more presidential than Kaine by far, and definitely more vice presidential. He kept his calm and cool. He was very on point, very targeted. I just, those years of experience of him, as a politician, really did him much better than it did Kaine. Kaine was 70 interruptions versus Pence's 40. I think also the moderator, she was having trouble.
Yeah, she did. She struggled, and she found her voice at all the worst times. When Kaine would lay into Pence, and Pence would get ready to deliver. So, we got to move on. Well, no, we don't got to move on quite yet. Let's hear what he has to say. Pence prosecuted the case in a way that Trump was not unable to. He went through the email scandal in some detail, pointed out why it was important, went through the Clinton Foundation scandal in some detail, pointed out why it was important. Trump didn't, Trump, I guess, he moves so fast through these cycles that he thinks everybody is up on all this as he is. Most of the people who vote for Clinton who are for Clinton, they don't think the email scandal is a big deal. They're like, oh, it's missing emails. Colin Powell did it. They've got the shorthand down, but they don't understand, all of national security was exposed here. And he's not, Pence was able to highlight what was important about this and why we got to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, do you think, in terms of the way Pence handled that, because those are the kinds of things that we wanted to hear in that first debate between Trump and Clinton. There was surely the opportunity to go there. Clinton is so vulnerable on this point, on these issues. Do you think that the fact that Trump kind of whiffed on that, as they prepared for this debate, they wanted to make sure that these points were going to be made?
Yeah, they got them made, and I hope that he watched and took notes, because that's the way to do this. Because as effective as Pence was about it, Trump making those arguments would be a lot more effective. It would also show that he can get into the level of specificity that people call for in this. He's sort of like, you're corrupt. Okay, she is, but I need to know how and why and days and times and so forth. And, Pence laid that out. Trump is, when he gets down, when he understands the fullness of a case, he's devastating, right? And he sort of went with generalities, and I hope he understands that not being prepared was a big problem for him, and I think he probably does. I think Kellyanne and Roger Ailes he'll really be ready for Sunday night. Yeah,
and I think that's the thing too, is just that the way he approached his first debate, they're not going to do that again. They realize that was a huge liability, a big mistake on their part. I did see which made me kind of laugh. I did see some headline news story that Trump was jealous of Pence's performance.
Yeah, I think Trump was happy with what happened.
Yeah, I think he'd be happy, but Trump does have a big ego, and if you had to look at the two guys as debaters at this point, you'd say Pence clearly was better, more on his game than Trump was. Trump still has another chance to go clear that up, but also I wonder how many people watching that debate began to think why isn't Pence the candidate?
There's that out there, and there's also that if any of those other 17 guys would have won, right, they would be crushing Clinton, and I don't agree with that. I think what is keeping Trump in the game is that he's making a different argument. I think I was for Cruz, right, who made the Reagan limited government, low taxes, free trade argument, and Cruz lost, and I think he would be losing now. I think his argument would be easy to stigmatize and to get people to reject. And Trump's argument, because for one reason, it's not all that clear exactly what it is, and two, it does take into effect, it does, the overarching thing is love America, make America better, right? Which resonates with a lot of people, is something that she has a hard time responding to, because they're not. patriotic on that side. They pretended to be for 3 days in Philadelphia, and it looked forced, right? And and they did it by putting four fences eventually around the convention center to keep all the flag burners far away from the cameras, right? So he's, I don't agree that like any other candidate. I think he's the only candidate who could be this close.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's patriotism, I think, is real. It's real genuine, his love for America. Everything with Hillary looks very forced and very fake in that regard. So, and it's hard to embrace her. And I think that's what people have a problem with in general, too. Yeah. Even the Democrats have some problem. They can't quite get their hands around her.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen this on your feed, but I think it's, who's doing the next debate, CNN? Somebody?
Well, it's Martha Raddatz and Anderson Cooper. So I guess I don't know exactly how that works out. Yeah,
but whoever it is, they have a thing on Facebook that says suggest questions to ask. Okay, here's my suggestion. Why do you want to be president? It's the James Stockdale question. Who are you? Why are you here? Okay, because I think his answer stomps her answer. I think the American people, I think that would turn the election if they would just ask. They want to ask these trip up. The leader of Sri Lanka just said, how would you handle the Straits of Malacca? Okay, Straits of Malacca is an important issue, shipping lanes that affect all of Asia. But, I mean, that's not what I want to know. Why do you want to be president, Hillary? Tell us what it is that animates you, that gets you out there, other than just accomplishing, adding another notch to your resume, right? Where Trump's thing is, and it is anti-corrupt as any message could be, is, I love America. I think it's in trouble, and I'm trying to help.
Yeah, let me ask you this, too, then. I mean, in looking to Sunday, I mean, what do you expect? Do you expect that after that first debate with all the criticism of Holt, do you think Raddatz and Cooper will try to be a little more fair? Or are they just going to revert to kind of their tendency as liberals and still be more in the more favorable towards Clinton than to Trump? I mean, and how do you think Trump will perform?
I worry more about Raddatz. I don't believe that she can think outside that box. Cooper has shown some ability to ask tough questions of both sides. It'll be interesting to see what he does. He also does not like being pegged as a shill for the Clinton campaign. So I can see him, going against type to make that point. You may get some odd stuff out of it. I believe that that they will have Trump prepared. They will at least have him say, they say Trump Foundation, you say Clinton Foundation, they say taxes, you say emails, or where those holes are and what you need to be proven. I don't think he will show up bluster, and I don't think she can pull out guys in the crowd. And I think he should do with that what Pence did with it. With when he's like, oh, you called this guy that and that guy this, and just say, well, you cook up all kind of gimmicks, because those are gimmicks, and people need to understand they're gimmicks, right?
Right. And now I don't think that debate, with Pence and with Kaine really necessarily move the needle, in terms of polling or anything like that. I mean, it might give you more confidence that should something happen to Trump, that there definitely is a better guy there than should something happen to Hillary.
Right.
On that basis. How critical do you think this next debate is for Trump?
I think, I think a lot's riding on it. I really do. I have people tell me that, we're sort of post-television and we're digital and we've moved past but it does give the media fodder, right? And so since the last debate, the hammer, not prepared, bluster, blah blah blah, and they've been able, and I guess it's made a little difference. What about 2 or 3 points of poll difference, the last one? And I think if he makes that up, or has a good debate performance, I think it turns the election, and I think it turns it pretty irretrievably. Then the third one, you put the ball in the deep freeze and wait till the clock runs out.
All right. Always a sports analogy in there somewhere. Let's talk briefly about another thing that came up, this Donald Trump's taxes leaked to the New York Times. It was 1995. It showed that he had lost, over $900 million. he came out, Trump's come out and talked about, this is showing his brilliance and everything like that. A lot of people, Hillary has criticized him. He's like, do you want a guy like that running the country? But this is also underscores a problem with the tax code, I think, among other things. But it was just, these were false narratives, I think, by the media.
Right, and I think that Pence made the point that Trump should make, which is, do you pay more taxes? Remember they had that year when they said you could opt to pay more taxes to help us with the debt if you chose. Do you know how much money they collected in America for that? The whole country, $130. 130. Okay, that's how much money people are willing to throw at just to help the government. Okay, and they shouldn't. Okay, but what he needs to say is not, I'm a genius, but this shows you the complexities of the tax code. You want to know how your government is bought. You want to know how the system is rigged. It's because, guys like me hire people to read the tax code and to find those advantages. Because just like you, we send in $130 more, as a country than we've had to that in a whole year. Okay, so he needs to make that point. This is about simplifying taxes. This is about making the system more fair. This is about you getting a chance. And like the reason it is, the way it is now, I should do what I'm doing. I have a fiduciary responsibility to all the people who work for me to make money so that they get paid.
Right, and what person who doesn't use either tax preparation software like TurboTax or go to an H&R Block or Liberty Tax Service or whatever doesn't try to find ways to maximize their deductions and everything like that and minimize their taxes?
Right.
I mean, isn't that basically? I mean, to me, in my mind, the IRS has just put this thing in my ear, saying I've got to find a way to make sure I send the government as little money as possible. They're already taking something on my paycheck every time I'm getting paid, but I'd like to get some of that back. And I am definitely motivated. I am thinking throughout the year on what I do, how my behavior affects my tax situation in many instances. So what he does it's a bigger, grander scale because the complexity of his businesses. The average Joe is not going to understand what Trump, all this stuff. I mean, that's why he has an army of accountants and attorneys and everything else. They figured all that stuff out. Right. He didn't do anything wrong.
Right. And, she does the same stuff, right? And she makes, 90% of her charity contributions were to the Clinton Foundation. She's paying herself, okay? And they are drawing the money out of that, They're making a ton of money. And they act like, was it 7% of the money they take in actually goes to do any charitable work? So, they're selling access, and they're keeping the money, and they're getting on him about taxes when that is the most blatant abuse of the tax code ever, right? And I think it's that's one thing that, going back on what I said earlier, would have been a good case for Cruz to make, because Cruz was a flat tax guy, is all this goes away if we just do a flat tax.
Right. Right. All right. So let's move on and just talk briefly about 538 and their electoral map. Nate Silver threw up this very interesting idea, the very, very small possibility that Gary Johnson, the former governor of New Mexico, the Libertarian candidate for president, could prevent Trump and Clinton from getting enough electoral votes to win the election if he wins his home state. Now, that he figures that's pretty infinitesimal, but it's still out there. It's still a possibility that he could do so. I think the calculations were, it was pretty close. They would still fall 2 to 5 votes short because he would, I think there's 5 electoral votes or something like that in New Mexico. It's enough to tip the scales. But that shows how close this election is.
Yeah.
This is still, a little bit after the debate kind of thing. These things kind of move. But, I think you have to look at places like 538, which are doing analysis to say, these what-if scenarios, this election season is so crazy, anything can happen.
Yeah. Gary Johnson is a squandered opportunity for the Libertarian Party. If you'd have had a good candidate, you could have done some serious damage in a lot of places. I don't think this will happen in New Mexico because New Mexico is a state where the two parties are really well organized with a lot of discipline. There's not a lot of independent in the middle noise like there is elsewhere. It's, there's a strong Democratic Party there and a strong Republican Party there. Steve Pearce was the congressman for, most of his district is, 80% of them speak Spanish, some also speak English, but speak Spanish, right? And he has been a strong border guy the whole time in Congress, but was able to win because of strong party organization. And he did a good job of talking to the people in that area, explaining what he was for.
Right. I think you're right on that. And as you said, he squandered it. He hasn't made anything better for him. He had his Aleppo comment, followed by he couldn't name a foreign leader that he admires,
or won it all.
Or won it all. Yeah, and won it all. And then they were trying to get him the other day to talk about Kim Jong Un, and he wouldn't or couldn't identify him. You just kind of wonder how much dope, how much weed has he smoked? Has it just really fried his brain that much? And he just every time it's like the deer in the headlights thing on television or something. I don't know what the deal is with him.
I don't know that it's that. I think he's honestly just, he is focused on the things that make libertarians, and free trade, open borders, kill the drug laws, whatnot. And he does not understand that, he does not worry about the other parts of being president, like foreign policy and so forth.
Yeah, which is kind of important if you're going to be president. All right, something that also came out, Hillary has been, she did this interview segment with Steve Harvey, and it came out that the questions were given to her about a week in advance, and it was really all lined up. So even when she goes, "Oh my," she was already prepped for that. It was all staged.
that probably goes on a lot more than we think.
It probably does, but it does lead into this whole thing about this dispute, this little spat that occurred last night, where when Megyn Kelly signed at the end of her show, she was talking, and she was complaining really about the softball interviews, and she called it the presidential protection program that both Trump and Hillary are under. That they're doing these softball interviews, and she didn't directly want to take a stab at Hannah. He didn't mention my name, but just because my colleague, at 10 o'clock kind of thing like that. Because Trump has been doing all these Fox interviews and has not done one with Megyn. And it's just very interesting to see, what goes on. I mean, it caused Sean to go on Twitter and accuse Kelly of supporting Clinton. Now, when I went back to go try to find that tweet, I couldn't find it anymore. It just seems to have disappeared into the ether.
It's interesting. Trump has really hurt her career. She has been a big loser in this election. She was probably the rising star of the entire TV news business when all this started. But he's got in 2 or 3 spats with her that have left her looking bad. It looked like she has an axe to grind and so forth. And it's astonishing to me, how far her star has fallen.
Yeah, and her contract comes up next year, so she may not stick around for lots of different reasons at this point. I mean, something that I didn't really anticipate a year ago.
Yeah, and they may not care. They may be fine with her walking.
They may be. They may be in this case. Another interesting thing that happened too is that Morning Joe, their panel, which is comprised mainly of liberals, actually blasted the news media, their colleagues, for the overt liberal bias, the overt really anti-Trump bias that reporters were showing on Twitter, and complaining that, which is remarkable because they were basically saying this shouldn't be happening. I mean, these are the people who we expect to report the news. I was almost shocked to hear them say that, and yet they're opining about this other thing. Mike Barnacle, of all people, comes out and he said, he says, I am astonished that the editors and the publishers are not telling the reporters who are covering the campaigns basically to not go on Twitter, not to do these things.
Right, and they're out cuting each other, and every story, and they put in words that I grew up in that business that you would never be allowed to put in. When you start journalism school, one of your first classes, they make you write without using adjectives. That would denude these stories. They would be published in 4 paragraphs, right? Because it's all adjectives. It's all the corrupt and lying Trump, And it's how can you say that's not for you to decide? That's for me to decide. You just say what he said, and I'll decide whether it's a lie. And they have taken on this role, and they've decided they have to stop Trump. And it's not even anti-Republican. It's not even anti-conservative, because you have people like Jen Rubin out there. They're like, hey, I'm conservative. Not really, but but this is not what we are. It's like, it is now, and it is personal with him. It's like he is a threat to the establishment broadly, the establishment of foreign policy, the establishment of the media, the establishment of the domestic policy, the think tanks, all of that are looking at him and saying our world order, as we've understood it all these years, it turns upside down if he wins.
That's right. All right, we're running out of time here, but let me read to you this quote from Bill Clinton about Obamacare the other day. So you've got this crazy system where all of a sudden 25 million more people have health care, and then the people who are out there busting it, sometimes 60 hours a week, wind up with their premiums doubled and their coverage cut in half. It's the craziest thing in the world. And then you have, on top of that, Chelsea coming out and saying that, we need to work on the affordable part of affordable health care. I mean, has Bill Clinton just thrown a dagger into this thing?
Well, it is interesting, and I think they think they are past the point where they need Obama. I can only imagine that, or he would not have said it. Okay, and I think Obama is peakish enough to where he's about to show them that they're not past the point, because there are still all these investigations they could activate. They have a lot of things stalled. They have 5 FBI field offices that say they have enough evidence that with a little investigative time, they can indict Hillary Clinton. They've stopped all 5 of these investigations. All he has to do is let one of them roll, and it could happen before the election.
I think Bill Clinton's become more of an asset to the Republican Party than we anticipated.
Yeah, I know.
All right, so now we're just gonna go ahead and let's go to our 2-minute warning.
2-minute warning. We are in the position of the Defense Department. Pentagon announced yesterday that we are going to try to establish a no-fly zone. They won't call it that. They call it an exclusive zone in Syria, where we are going to protect al-Qaeda from attacks by the Russians. The Russians are going to try to keep Assad in power. We are going to fight on the other side. We talked about the problem in Syria has been identifying good guys to fight with. We found our good guys, and they're the people who attacked us on 9/11.
All right, and I will close with this. It's just that one of the other stories that came out this week was just that we've seen a lot of newspaper endorsements for Hillary Clinton. A lot of traditionally Republican papers are going that way. But what I thought was interesting was the fact that several of these newspapers are reporting that they have received a wave of cancellation requests from their subscribers as a result of that. I'm not convinced that newspaper endorsements are all that important anymore these days. I mean, how many people are reading the physical newspaper to begin with, and or reading the editorial, even if you're on your phone or your tablet to begin with? But newspapers can't afford to lose any subscribers at all, and I think they've really just cut their own throat. And I don't know what their future is now if they just continue to go down this path.
The other story that with that, the Monday night football game that San Francisco was involved in, 50% of normal ratings because people are mad about the national anthem.
Okay, well, with that's it for this week's edition of the Bias Buzz. Join us next week for yet analysis of the next debate, I guess.
That's right, Sunday night.
All right, we'll see you then. Bye.
Bullseye.